People who have been on reality TV shows. What's rigged and what's not? My friend was on What Not to Wear and I was in the audience of people who were there to react when she came out from behind the curtain with her new look. She came out over and over again, but our cheering was never enthusiastic enough for the producers. After about 10 takes, we were screaming our heads off, totally hysterical, as if we'd just seen her rise from the dead. So that part was fake. I thought she just looked alright. Sub-stories on singing shows. It's not the contestant's fault. I made it through a few rounds for a well-known singing show and they begged you for a sob story. On my very first application form, I was asked about the most difficult moment in my life, what obstacles I'd overcome to be there, had I ever experienced bullying, etc. They pretty much make you tell them a sob story, so I wrote all about my heartbreak when I ran out of coffee. I have always thought there are far too many sob stories on those shows. My aunt and uncle were on Love It or List It. They had them record both endings and the network chose which one they thought was best. They're still in the house and they love it, but the show says they listed it. Already I don't know half of these shows and I'm actually really excited to find out about obscure or weird reality game shows or something that I just don't know about. My cousin was on a Toronto dating show called Matchmaker many years ago. She said it was completely scripted and she met her blind date before filming so the producers could go over the script with them. They were given a list of ridiculous and racy questions to ask each other and encouraged to make out if they actually liked each other or to cause a scene and be dramatic if they didn't really click. I mean, when you're thinking about all kinds of reality television that there are, dating shows are most definitely the most likely to be fake because, you know, if it's blind dating especially, like things can go wrong there. Really bad things can go wrong there. So it makes sense that they'd be like, hey, this is all fake. This is actually the guy that you're going to be meeting and stuff. My daughter and her boyfriend were on divorce court. They were not married and the show's producers helped them tailor their story, which was completely made up. To be more interesting, they are now married and since they've already been divorced, it should last forever. Some of my friends went on Cash Cab. One guy was chosen the day before and told to come with up to 4 friends to a certain spot the next afternoon. They met a producer who hailed the cab and were told they were going to a game show. They had to reshoot getting into the cab because my one friend said something like, "What are the chances we're on our way to another game show?" I have worked on several reality TV shows. Some are more fake than others, but they are all heavily scheduled and formatted, never spontaneous. I worked on a certain MTV dating show where one of the contestants tried to escape the house in the middle of the night, and one of the production assistants had to tackle him in the front yard and drag him back into the house. It's like prison. They are completely cut out from the outside world. No computer, books, phones, watches, and they are fed mostly booze. They all go insane. Also, if the show doesn't air, they don't win their prize money. This is a standard for all competition reality shows. I think I remember there being an episode of Big Brother or something, you know, back when it was like a new thing, I'm pretty sure, and they all had to like sit in a box or something for like the entire day, or it was like the last person out of the box wins the challenge, which, yeah, that does sound pretty ridiculous and just maddening. I have a friend who signed up to audition for a show that she thought was The Bachelorette, or something similar. I guess it's standard practice to not give the actual name of the show and just say, "We need good-looking, energetic young women for blah, blah, blah." So she got called back, went through a few different interviews and a screen test. Finally, they tell her that the concept is that she will be running a pawn shop with another woman. She is a dental assistant with no experience remotely related to the pawn business. Pawn Queens ended up being on for 2 seasons and they gave her a backstory about how/why she got interested in the pawn business. Not exactly shocking, but it was pretty interesting to see that they basically looked for hot girls first, then put them into a proven concept, Pawn Stars type reality show. A friend of mine was on Shark Tank recently. The episode hasn't aired yet, so we don't know how they will edit the story to be, but they did get an actual deal with actual money from Mr. Wonderful. My father is a dealer in a particular variety of memorabilia and also fairly well known as an authenticator of said memorabilia. He was on a show featuring storage units a few years ago. The show crew peppered a storage unit with some of my father's own collectibles. The hosts found them, then brought them back to my father to be appraised. He then offered to purchase his own items back from the hosts. Was on an episode of MTV Made. It wasn't super scripted, but certain things were added to make the kids look stupid. On our episode, the producers had socks stuffed inside a kid's drum to make them sound bad, even though the kid didn't actually do that. Stuff like that. But the script had room for ad-libs, and the show was fine with that as long as nobody said anything too crazy or suggested anything they couldn't deliver on. Unfortunately, a lot of the kids on the show go back to how they were before almost immediately after filming. People can totally be who they want to be, but why apply to the show? And also, it kinda sucks when the show drops a butt ton of money on you. Our episode involved paying for an appearance from Finger 11 when they were huge, and it ends up being a waste for everything other than getting a TV episode out of it. I was on a show geared towards preteens and teenagers that tried to imitate Fear Factor on YTV. They had us compete in various unique athletic competitions and other things. Most of it was surprisingly real. We actually did compete. Our scores were based on our performance in the task. The one thing that wasn't real was that the episode made it look like everything happened in a day, when in reality, it took about 5 days to film. Overall, it was a really cool experience that I wouldn't trade for the world. Hey, we got a nice one. A friend of mine worked as an art director on the American version of Super Nanny. She said pretty much everything was real, maybe editing together to make it a bit more dramatic, but the family interactions were genuine, and she said Jo Frost is a very sweet, warm woman who really does her best for the kids. I'm not sure if I prefer Super Nanny to be fake or not, because some of the children could be vile, and some of the parents, if I remember correctly, were kind of not very receptive to their children's needs either in some cases. Every single thing is fake. I was on a cake competition show. The judges recorded 2 takes for every comment, 1 positive and 1 negative, so the editors could put it together however they wanted. They rolled the clock back an hour so everyone else could finish. We had over 3 months to plan our spontaneous cake. Oh yeah, and while we won by the judges' vote, a producer decided one of the other cakes would film better for the big reveal, so we didn't win, even though we should have. I was on Restaurant Impossible a couple years ago. They say they have a $10,000 budget for the renovation. Definitely does not mean they use it. The host, Robert Irvine, was only there for like an hour a day of the 3-ish day venture, just to get in the way and whine about things for the camera. They made up this whole story about how my boss would lose everything and cause so much stress on his marriage and family if the restaurant failed. They had us walk this direction with a sullen look to show that we felt underappreciated as employees. We had 4 employees actually walk out because of some of the comments Robert made. We also did not get paid any extra for any of this. But while all of that was annoying, I will say this. The Food Network did pay almost $4,000 for a very local construction crew to come in, which is awesome for local business and support. The food was very awesome, and I got to learn some insane techniques from the world-class chefs at the very start of my career. I am a chef myself now. It was a very neat, exciting thing for a small town and definitely brought our community together, and while the business did still end up failing a year and a half later, my boss was totally fine because he bought out another restaurant and is now a very successful person elsewhere. Kinda sucks that they feel they need to play up the drama aspect of it, but I think it's good that they at least are there to actually do some good in that case, which, a little bit of good, little bit of bad makes it more interesting. I was on an episode of Extreme Guide to Parenting. My mom is a hypnotherapist for a living, and so they interviewed my brothers and me about getting hypnotized to do chores and get good grades. They had us say things like, my mom using neuro-linguistic programming to make us do things, and that she hypnotizes us on a daily basis. I was 14 and I had to pretend that I had a crush on this boy, and my mom taught me how to hypnotize him to like me. All the parts with me in it were cut out, thank God, but my twin brothers got a decent amount of airtime. All of it was scripted. It was basically a publicity stunt on my mom's part to get more business, and I don't blame her. It worked pretty effectively, and we got a $5,000 check for letting them use our house to film. To clarify, everything my mom said was true to a degree, and she has hypnotized me in the past. But hypnotherapy is not what everyone thinks it is. It is a way of gaining more self-control, not less, and in no way is it someone controlling your mind. There are subtle cues you can give people to get them to agree with you, such as nodding your head when you ask for something and touching their shoulder, but other than that, it it is mostly used to help people stop smoking or biting their nails and even improving concentration and avoiding panic attacks. Just like another therapist might help you, my mom does it with hypnosis. As for exploiting my brothers and me, it was really fun and I laughed a lot when I saw the final cut. I thought my family didn't seem so bad when compared to others that I saw in the same episode, but I can't judge. Either way, the whole plot was made up, but it is true that my mom taught us how to exit something called fight or flight mode when in non-life-threatening situations, like when you panic. She taught us to think clearly. Nothing as extreme as how they portrayed us in the show. Honestly, it's counterintuitive to make a show that puts my mom in a bad light for business reasons, and so while everything was scripted, she did maintain her usual air of professionalism. The directors just took all the parts that made her look as bad as possible. I'm genuinely enjoying this one because not only do I get a bit of insight as to what is actually fake in these TV shows, the entertainment factor, but also the utility factor, like with the Ultimate Chef Experience or whatever it was a couple stories ago. Diners, drive-ins, and dives. Kinda real. Maybe. 50-50. Friend owns a butcher shop and happens to be the supplier of meats to this restaurant where an episode of DDD was going to be filmed, and asked me to come along with him. We were part of the crowd scene where guys come around and ask other people things like, so how's the burger, etc. Thing is, not one of the people in the restaurant during that scene was a random restaurant customer. Everyone was a special invited guest of the restaurant owners. Once we arrived, the producer dude placed us in seats and they made a few people move tables and booths for a better overall crowd look, I presume. They gave us some preliminary instructions: make sure phones are off, don't ask for guys' autographs at all, don't pay attention to camera, etc. And then we waited and waited and waited. After maybe 45 minutes or so, the waitstaff just started bringing out food and placing it on tables. No one had ordered anything, but the staff just started bringing stuff out. Once a decent number of people had dishes at their table, the servers would continue bringing food out. But this time with camera peeps behind them filming them as they took plates to tables. They did some interview shots with people eating, and when I watched the episode, it was edited to look as if they were responding to something the guy had said to them, even though he wasn't around at all at this point. Shortly after that, Guy Fieri comes in and everyone applauds, and he just sort of waves his hand at everyone quickly, never smiles, and goes back to typing on his phone. Now, I had always thought Guy Fieri looked kinda douchey, but was probably a nice person. No absolute total diva douchebag the entire time, never acknowledged the crowd, barely acknowledged the production crew, just kinda seemed like a douche. Literally was standing right beside a booth where someone was sitting, and the lady sitting there said something to him like, hey, we love your show. Guy Fieri just kinda does this half smirk and smile thing and never acknowledges the lady or anyone at her booth. Only, and I mean only, when the video guy would say, action, would he try to turn on the charm and actually talk to crowds of people. Get excited and talk about the food and stuff. Later, after he filmed the restaurant scenes, they backed his Camaro out of a trailer and filmed all of the scenes where he's driving around. The crowd scenes were done at this point. My buddy and I were just hanging out and chatting with the owner and one of his managers. The restaurant kitchen scenes where they were going to film Guy and the chef prepping and making the food were filmed the day before, and the owner said it was the exact same thing. Zero interaction with Guy Fieri until the cameras were rolling. They even filmed some outtakes, which were somewhat pre-planned and set up in advance. Once the car scenes were all done, Guy Fieri heads back into the RV and we didn't see him again. The crew came around and did some other shots and interviewed some of the other staff and such. Overall, it was an interesting day. I have admittedly never had much of an opinion of Guy Fieri. Not surprising, ghost hunting shows are fake. What is surprising is how they do it. See those fancy instruments they carry that no one has ever heard of? They're actually remotes to each other. All you gotta do is split into two groups, and when one team is adjusting their settings, the other team is detecting ghosts. So simple, and you get twice the footage. Also, one time in a screening when the hunters were reviewing evidence, a producer whispered to me, see that ghost shape behind the door? Yeah, that's the sound guy. Wow. Now that's actually interesting to me and sounds kind of fun and makes ghost hunting shows, I don't know, kind of more entertaining. If anything, that's just a good idea to be like, yeah, we're gonna prank each other or something. Had a friend who worked on the Kardashians. They were filming a huge party. It was dead. No one doing anything. The producers asked if anyone had any ideas. Friends mentioned beer pong. Producers made him act like a guest and teach the mom to play to make the party look fun. Everything was fake. I heard from a tattoo artist that he had auditioned to be on Ink Master and met Kay Cutter, season 2, and he explained that to be a part of the show, they look for personality traits and flanderize the hell out of you to make a character that can create drama to the show. Kay Cutter did actually actually have a criminal record, so they used that to make him the bully of that season. The tattoo artist who I was talking with claimed K is actually a really cool and nice guy. I have never watched an episode of Ink Masters, and this is the first I'm hearing of a K cutter. I worked on the Sing-Off and ABDC for several seasons in the Contestant department. The performances and the performers were all real and really cool. I listened to the Street Corner rehearse Creep on stage one day and got goosebumps from how good they were. There are decisions made by producers to increase the market value of the show, like keeping a fourth group until the final round because they didn't want to lose a key demographic from the audience. The finale was always live and based on fan vote online, so that part was real. One season of ABDC, a contestant broke his leg. That was also sadly real as I was there to witness call 911, the producers, and my manager. They were concerned about getting B-roll of him going into the ambulance. He was a really sweet kid. But these shows are exceptions in the industry, not the rule, and both have been cancelled. Went to a filming of American Ninja Warrior. They filmed all night with over 100 competitors, running the course back-to-back for around 7 hours. The only ones cheering like on the show were family members on sidelines. Everyone else was kind of quietly observing. It was impossible to figure out who would make the show and who ended up on the cutting room floor. After watching the actual show on air, even completing the course didn't guarantee that your run would be shown. Several got over the break, so-and-so made it to the end of the course, cue 2-second cut of button press. The best bet to making it on air, outside of their stable of famous ninjas, was to fail on the course in a way that nobody else had. That very last bit about failing in a way that nobody else has yet, it just feels too true in not only people, but also just life. My brother-in-law surprised our family a few years back by taking us out to dinner, and at that dinner he announced that he was taking an internship in Peru. Turns out he was on a major US reality show and had signed an NDA and couldn't tell us where he was really going. He ended up being a semi-finalist, going all the way to the finale. He said the parts that they make especially dramatic, the parts where contestants stand in front of the judges and explain themselves and then ultimately one is sent off of the show, could take hours to film, and that each of them would have their reaction filmed a handful of times with the producers standing right there on set acting as directors and coaches. He also said that the contestants were constantly supplied with booze of their choice and were encouraged to drink. He said people were under the influence of alcohol very frequently, but that it would never be evident as the cameraman would keep the drinks out of the shots. As far as the rigging of the results went, he said he was fairly certain that the producers were having the final say, but that the judges were included in the decision-making process. A friend of mine was on Cupcake Wars. His team actually came first. He said that the ingredients were partially random. The studio sent his team a list of 5 or so different ingredients that were potentials, and then 3 different themes. He had a plan for every single ingredient and theme if needed. Britain's Got Talent. There are several hidden rounds with producers before you get to the main stage with the judges. My cousin is a very talented musician and got to the last round before the auditions, but they said he didn't have the right image. They select the most watchable acts and usually try and avoid any act that's too professional in case they bow out and get a recording contract outside of the show's format. This is just concerning musicians at least, so not fake as such, but slanted. I know someone who went on Britain's Got Talent once, and I will simply say that they made a bit of a butt of themselves, but it was also kind of a mixture of their own decision making and the way that the scene was shot and edited. Undercover Boss is a joke. Everyone knows the show, everyone knows what's going on, everyone knows who the owner of the store is, and for those who don't, are a simple Google search away from knowing. I briefly appeared in an episode of Airport 24/7 Miami. My appearance was basically me doing my job the same way I would do without cameras rolling. The same was true of the stars of the show, since it wasn't like a traditional reality show where they needed to create a conflict. The airport does that organically. They got really lucky that some particularly noticeable events happened while they were filming, like when the fuel farm caught fire and exploded, or when 2 aircrafts collided on the taxiway. Everything they showed on the show actually happened, but editing did make some events seem more dramatic. Oh, is it bad that this subject is actually making me want to work on reality TV shows behind the scenes so I can laugh at the fact that a show is trying to manufacture conflict and whatnot? It just sounds so silly. Like something from a holy book where God, played by MTV, bursts into your life. And like this Miami one was interesting because there's a day-to-day conflict going on there, but the MTV people just go, okay, you hate this guy, that guy hates that guy, you love love this guy and you hate that guy because she loves this guy. That kind of thing. And the thing is, I scarcely ever watch shows like this, but being on the inside, being behind the scenes and creating this stuff can be a harrowing but entertaining process. Throwaway for obvious reasons. I was on Love Island last year. It's a popular TV reality show in the UK. This year's is actually on at the moment. I guess people assume some is staged and rigged, but you have no idea how much. We were literally given scripts of arguments to have, things to say. You know when you see them having sex under the covers? Not happening. We would have to imitate this 5 to 10 times each, and the producers would choose the most realistic one. There is whole parts of the villa that you don't even see. Multiple camera rooms. Ever wondered how the islanders never clean, but it always gets cleaned? There is literally cleaners, waiters, etc. in the whole time. Only about 6 hours a day and night are filmed. There is a director there saying cut and everything. You know the £50,000 grand prize for the winner doesn't compare to the $75,000 we got for being in the villa. Regardless if we were there for 6 days or 6 weeks, when we got out, we had meetings and I had over 600 brands queuing up to work with me. Now I'm a nobody, and you wouldn't even recognize my name. Relationships aren't real. There is an agreement that is 100% for the show. Things are never how they seem. Also, we are shown the episodes every day. There is no will be cool to see what I look like on TV when I get out. There is also outside contact. That is just bullcrap. My jaw literally dropped on my 4th day when they showed us the show live on TV because of how different it was to reality. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.